Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 515 of Constructive Criticism. I'm joined by my co-host. I'm Easy, by the way. I'm joined by a man I would always homie scoop for, Mason Clark.
Oh, you just can't avoid it, can you?
And the person that is crushing it on their daily music challenge, Abe Stein.
I thank you for the acknowledgement. I know I'm doing a great job, but it's good to hear it.
We're going to talk not about homie scoops, but about, I don't know, a world in which maybe you get some. And that's an interesting topic this week. We are going to talk about building a support system. And I want to be clear. I thought about this as I was talking to somebody else about this episode. I was like, I want to be clear that we had already planned on doing this episode. I looked back on how long ago I suggested doing this specific episode. Abe, do you know how long ago it was?
I think it was over a month at least.
Yeah.
Maybe two.
Yeah. I think it was May that I was like, hey, I want to do this episode. We finally got to the point where like we're doing new episodes again. And Abe was like, this is the one I want to do of the ones that Spencer suggested. And then the next day we had some Twitter drama. So we're just perfect timing here, Abe.
Yeah, I mean, the wave is riding us, truly. The discourse is aligning, the stars align for the CCMTG content schedule, and not vice versa.
It's so funny to look at. Before we do that, though, before we talk about building a support system and how important it is in MTG, we want to talk about always improving. Always improving is the point of the show. It's the thing that, you know, we had family pictures a couple weeks ago, and I put on one of my always improving wristbands, and I wanted it in my family pictures, and I thought about like what it means to me and what it has meant to the show, and this thing that we've adopted as kind of our core principle of helping people improve. And I think that this is often, you know, when we do those CCMTG awards, like one of the best parts of the show. It's hard to compete with this idea of always trying to be your best and being better tomorrow than you were today. I'm going to go first this week. And I did something that I actually don't remember the last time I did. And I took a whole, I think, 8 days off of Magic. Played a ton of Magic today. I also took a bunch of time off Smash. I just did not compete at anything, didn't try to do anything competitive, and really took a step back. And I want to talk about what that feels like, because I did it to spend time with my family. I did it because of the holiday, but I got back into Magic and I got back into Smash today, and I lost a lot. The metagame had changed more than I expected on Explorer in Arena, which is what I played today, where to the point where I had like a 2-3 league, and then switched to Prowess and immediately won because, you know, that deck's goated for me. And then played Smash and like really had a hard time just pressing my buttons. And what was so funny about that is instead of it feeling deflating and instead of it feeling like a problem, it felt motivating. It's like, okay, like, yep, we got to knock the rust off. And once I knocked the rust off, I started winning in Magic. Once I knocked the rust off, I started winning in Smash. And it was like, okay, we can take a mental break. We can do this thing where we literally just relax, and it's okay, and we don't have to be thinking about things all the time, and just, when we're ready, make an effort and go from there. And that, it's something that like gives me anxiety a lot. Like I feel like I'm going to fail if I'm not playing Magic, or I'm not playing Smash, or I'm not like doing something to be always improving. But sometimes that always improving moment needs to be like, dude, just have a detox. Not like Hungry Box or like Zane, but like Spencer, like where you actually like just take a little break.
Yeah, and I think that's really important thing to let yourself do. Like if you don't let yourself rest, especially, I mean, this happens to me a lot in a lot of things I do. It's like I find that taking even a week, sometimes even like up to like a month seriously off. Like I'll do things to stay engaged, but like, I mean, I've done it with Magic. I've done it in the past with other hobbies of mine, like disc golf, where I'll just take like, upwards of 3 or 4 weeks of not really seriously engaging and then come back to it and find that like I've let go of bad habits that I had, or like, I've undone, like time away helps me undo like incorrect thought patterns or incorrect habits that I had, that I was ingraining myself at that time. Like having to do it again or having to shake off the rust, like you're saying, like that can be such an important process to really allow yourself to take that step forward and like really think about it in a clear-headed way, in a new way, especially if you're thinking about it all the time, like working on, one deck or one format in the same approach repeatedly. You kind of feel like you've exhausted everything, and when you leave and come back, I know that's been huge for me. So it's great to hear that you were able to let yourself do that, and hopefully shaking that rust off lets you, right, finding out that, okay, I shouldn't be playing this deck I went 2-3 with, instead I should be playing prowess, right?
Well,
like that's
I do think that I just have played so much prowess that it's whatever. For what it's worth, I was going to mention this, and I'll just mention it now. The Explorer metagame has become really toxic to Green, because Green was doing, I mean, I think Mason and I both were posting like way over like 80% with the deck, like not even a week ago. And Mason doesn't even play Arena. Like he was like, this is just a thing I can do. And it was just that dominant that it's like all blue white, all Amalia, like all control decks and all Amalia now. And it's just very different world than it was, just a week ago. Abe, you weren't here last week. Why don't you jump in with your always improving moment?
Yeah, so my always improving moment actually comes in a similar vein to yours, Spencer, in that I've been not really engaging with Magic as much as I would like to in a lot of ways, mostly because I've been feeling really just kind of burnt out from a combination of a lot of work, stress and factors, some amount of latent just everything going on for like the RCs and RCQing and just keeping up with everything. But the always improving moment here isn't that I like have been taking that time where I need it, because I've been pretty good about doing that recently. It's that I'm using that time to do more than just like rest or just unplug. Specifically, like in terms of like, I don't know, my job or like, some of these bigger factors in my life, is actually devoting some more of that time to thinking about what my next steps for the future should be to get myself out of a situation where I'm feeling this burnout, or out of a situation where I'm feeling this spent, and what that looks like in a way that I never really have before. I don't know if it's like getting to be like a mature adult happening to me right now, or, like just making, trying to make the most of the situations I'm in. But, actually saying, okay, I'm not going to play, Magic for, I'm not going to play another league of drafting Modern Horizons 3 just because I would like to, or even I'm not just going to go play some other game while I'm kind of feeling this way to recover. I'm going to actually spend, some amount of time planning, okay, what am I going to do to make this not be my normal for all? Because it just has been, like, honestly, for the last, like, 2 or 3 months, pretty harsh. And it's just, like, if I'm going to make that change, acknowledging, like, I need to do that. And so building in the time to prioritize that has been, like, a pretty big thing I've been working on, especially in the last, 2 weeks, looking at a lot of, just, like, the realities of, like, situations I'm in, and what it is I can afford to do or not afford to do, or what my options are, and starting to put thought into that well before it becomes something that's like an immediate problem for me. And that's just a big change from how I've done things in the past. So
I'm a huge fan of that. And I don't know if I want to dive too deep into this. One of the things that I often get asked about is like, Spencer, how did you end up in the career that you're in? Because it happened while I was on the podcast, right? Like I transitioned from customer service into software product management. And a lot of it has to do with kind of exactly what Abe is saying, where it was like, you take the opportunities that you have, but you assess them, and you figure out like, okay, what is this opportunity mean for me? What does it mean for what time I have available and things like that? And it's really kind of similar to the thing that we've talked about in Magic a lot, where you like when you're thinking about like a deck choice or a tournament, where you're like, okay, well, like what time do I have dedicated to this? What resources do I have available for this? And it is, oftentimes when we talk about these things on the podcast, they're small chunks of things that you can apply to much bigger things. And I really love to hear that you're doing that to your life.
Yeah, I think it's also good to kind of acknowledge like games like Magic or Helldivers or Balatro, or whatever it is, they are like good escapes, which are good when you're kind of on the right track. But if you're on the wrong track and you're escaping, then you're still kind of like on that same thing, right? So like if everything's going well, you had a stressful day, it can be great to, draft a Flage, 7-0 call it a day, but you're still in that same spot, So I'm glad that you kind of took some time to kind of try to steer the ship the right way, and it's a lot like steering your ship where these things slowly start happening. But I think once you start going on the path you want to be, you're going to be much happier. So I'm happy to hear you took some time to do that.
If I could open Flage in all my drafts, it would be a lot harder to make the good decision for myself. So thankfully, Mason, you didn't manage to convince them also to put a copy of Flage in every pack.
Yeah, I should have put it at rare. Made it happen a lot more.
Hey, so what about you, man?
My always referring moment this week kind of comes from playing a little bit of Lorcana. So I have a shop about 2 minutes from me, and they had like their Ursula Rise thing. It doesn't really matter. All you need to know is that basically these Lorcana game days have like these $600 promos that they give out to top four. And I have a lot of people locally here who are friends who have Lorcana cards, and I kind of just had a free Saturday, and I didn't have anything to do. My girlfriend was like busy out of town, and I was like, I'm just gonna like play this. I think it'll be fun. And so I met up with them and played a little bit beforehand, and I had basically not the best deck, but like a very solid deck. But in playing it and playing against a friend of the show, Garrison, I realized I didn't understand enough of what was going on. And even though the deck was good, I could probably beat people who were also kind of just showing up in gaming. But if I wanted to like actually try to win one of these things, I needed to play a different deck. So I ended up switching to a deck that was much more exploitable when it came to like, playing against really strong players who knew what was up, but was a much more straightforward, easy deck to play, and specifically really mattered on your sequencing. And if you understood sort of what your role is, which was the same in every matchup, basically to get down this one big Krakatoa guy and quest for a bunch and use this card that basically doubles that you can win. And so that really leans into my skill of kind of macro game planning and planning out the entire turn and executing. And so I switched to that deck and was doing much better, in our little games, and then ended up actually losing round one to a friend who ended up winning the whole thing, but then rattled 5 in a row, including a crazy match against Garrison where like I had to think about every card in my deck, and basically the only way to win was to draw a whole deck and then win on the very last possible second before I deck. And I was able to do it, and it was super sick. And I lose it in top 8, so I actually didn't get the promo. I was one match away from doing it, but it's a game I don't really play. I haven't played Lorcana since set 1. We're on set 4 now. And what really taught me was that the basics matter so much more than everything else, right? Like I understood at the core what Lorcana was about and what my deck was about. And so there's this kind of double always remembering moment. One of the classic, like, hey, sequencing, these sort of things matter so much. Really need to like work on this, especially in Magic. They can get you so far. And then the other one of like, this might not be the best deck, but it is a solid choice. And for where I am at, I should play this one, which I think is like a really good sort of thing to relearn. Because in Magic, a lot of times I am well enough invested with all the main formats that I can kind of pick whatever I want, and I have a good enough knowledge that isn't an issue. But for something like Legacy, I feel like I'd be pretty underprepared to play like a Riscaminator Mirror, and maybe I should play something that's a bit more like linear, like actual Reanimator, for example. So it was very helpful in sort of that and remembering those sort of tools and lessons.
I love it. The housekeeping really quick. We have our sponsor at MTG. Use the link in the show notes. Get access to the best arena overlay possible. Also, if you want to support the show directly, head over to the swag store. It's just at constructorism.com. Click swag. You can buy swag for drafting archetypes. You can buy swag for constructive criticism. And everything is priced so that if you buy something, we basically get $1 or less on it. Some of it's priced so that we don't get nothing. Some of it's priced for what, whatever. But if you want to support the show and you want some swag attached to it, it's a great way to do that. However, shout out to our patrons. We have a new patron, Tim. We appreciate every patron that comes on to the show, and it means the world. Every week, we like to give a shout out to our newest patrons. Tim, thank you so much for joining, and we appreciate you. If you want to become a patron, go to patreon.com/CCPG. Outside of the sponsors, that is the other great way to support the show, and it means the world to us. Let's talk about building a support system, though. We kind of hinted at it at the beginning of the show. And I was originally going to give the intro to the topic because it was my idea. But I thought that you, Abe, when reading over the show notes and thinking about it, did such a good job of expressing your thoughts that I wanted to give it to you. What is a Magic support system?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially in light of, like we alluded to at the start of the show, kind of the controversy of the weekend of, homie scooping, team scooping, Raisin Bran scoops from Mason's tier list. The idea of a support system in Magic, it's an important one. I mean, I know I have I think all of us even would say we have deep support systems that we can lean on when it comes to preparing for events and also just making sure that we're, able to achieve what we want to achieve. But really, like, a Magic support system is more than just players who are on your team and you test together. A support system includes, players you carpool with or can borrow cards from, or you can have that conversation about a deck with, or like run a deck list or a sideboard plan off of. It can be people who you don't even talk to. At times, my support system has been a lot of content, or individual content creators who I know I can trust. Or sources that you use to make sure that you're staying up to date for yourself. And really, it's just your network of information and resources beyond just what you have that that allow you to achieve at the level you want to. In short, it's just a support system to making sure that you're able to play the way you want to week in, week out. But in Magic, not like your support system in your regular life.
Yeah, I love it, and I think about like a lot of things. Like, it was pretty early on in Magic that I realized, people pool cards, like they know what's theirs, they share cards. That's a thing that helps you get to the point where like you can compete at FNM, or you can compete at back in the day it was PTQs, right? And that was part of forming a team, is that you had the ability to literally field like 3 tier 1 decks. Like that was a hard thing to do for a kid, for me, like me, just fresh out of my parents' house, playing Magic. Like, that was a difficult thing. Then there was the idea that, we would also talk about those decks, right? Like, well, what 75 do we want to field for Grixis Twin or Blue-Red Twin and for Caw-Blade? Like, do we need 8 Jaces? That's like a pretty big investment. Do we need, this is like boomer talk, but that type of thing happens gradually. And I also think it's kind of hard. Like, you have to really understand and trust people. And part of that is like building relationships, which can be hard for some people. Like, it can be a barrier to entry for this point. And we'll get into that later. But I do think that, like, one of the ways to get over it is, I love what you said, Abe, like carpooling. Like, so many people will just drive themselves 2 hours to an RCQ these days. I don't think that needs to happen. I think that you can, like, find your local group and be like, hey, like, who's going to this? Can we carpool? And you can make relationships that way, like we did on those 8-hour car rides to PTQs back in the day. I also wanted to talk about something you've mentioned about content creation on this part of the show. And I think a lot about PV's articles from when I was playing Magic. And like, I think that you could read PV's articles and know you were getting really good content. I hope that people can read Mason's articles today and know that Mason is putting his heart into those articles, right? And like that those people can be a part of your support system without having direct access to them, because they are giving you the access that you need for that. And that then you can leverage that as the discussion point for whatever your group of people is that you want to talk to about these things.
Yeah, I think that, like, I mean, overall, like, thinking about the support system, right? Like, content, you're right, catching a ride. I know when I was in the same boat, Spencer, when I was like 16, 17, 18, I was like, I can't get to this event. Like, it's really far away and gas is really expensive. It's like, I'm going, like, tag along and, like, we'll figure it out. It was like a real way that I built a lot of relationships with players in my local scene. But also, at times where I didn't have, the time to really make a good, put a lot of time into testing or make a good deck choice, like, or maybe make a really educated or thought out deck choice, I could count on content creators, right, to give me their opinions, or get a snapshot of the metagame and say, okay, maybe with what I think and what I knew coming in, but I haven't had time to play, this is what I would do, or this is how I would change things. I know in various Pioneer seasons in the past, I know there are a lot of people who've used Misplaced Ginger as their entire support system. That and a credit card to buy all their Rakdos cards. That's a real way that a lot of people engage with things, and that allows them, right, to make Magic a sustainable part of things for their engagement with it, without having to do it all on your own. And I think that, it looks different for everyone, but, building an idea of what your picture looks like in terms of how you can, right, make Magic that thing you want it to be, that's really what comes into building a support system, right? Like, it's about having that network around you, and be that a network of information, be that a network of people, be that a combination of the two. I think that, like, both aspects really, they combine to make this, and everyone has one. There's not a player who I've ever heard really talk about Magic who does not have someone or something that they can rely on and say, okay, this is where I got my inspiration from, or this is where I got, my information from. Or sometimes it's, what Cedric Phillips used to say on the First Sleeveless podcast was like calling to the president with Jerry T, or with Mason calling to the president for math that he doesn't know. Like, everyone's got someone in their corner, and it's really about making sure that, right, you're making the most of those resources and amassing those resources in a way that works for you. Doing things kind of like you were saying, Spencer, like doing things that encourage that in your local scene, right? It's paying in what you're getting out.
Yeah, I have two thoughts that I want to share, but I want to pitch to Mason on the second thought. My first one is, like, I want everybody to know that we've all been there. Like, you might be listening to this podcast, you're like, no, like, nobody's gonna let me jump in their car. Nobody's gonna, like, they are. Somebody's gonna let you jump in their car. Somebody's gonna loan you cards. Like, you just have to put in the emotional deposits. The other thing that I wanted, like, we had a local player that became like a silver pro. It was well known on the MTG circuit. The one time we were PTQing to, oh man, I don't even remember where Dave Darts is in Wyoming for the PTQ. But if you're a Dave Darts person, you know what I'm talking about. There's like one PTQ every season back in the day in Wyoming was always a Dave Darts. Dave Darts and billiards, because we played on pool tables.
That's so sick.
Abe's reminiscing about the old PTQ scene. And, we went to a restaurant, and this person tipped a penny. the waitress for their order. And I put down a $10 bill. And I walked outside with this young man. I was like, hey, if you don't have the money to like pay for dinner and a tip, that's okay. What you did is not okay. What you need to do is like tell us, like, hey, I don't have the money to really like pay for like food on this trip if we're gonna go to like this style of restaurant and stuff that you guys want to go to when you go on PTQ trips. Like, this is what my budget is, and that's okay. Like, I think that people will often support you in that. They'll either like pick a cheaper place or like they'll do whatever. But I think that honesty is like how you build that support system, and I think it's really important. The second thing I want to talk about is the perception that people have that a support system is a playtesting team, like you're on Channel Fireball, you're on Team Handshake. And Mason, you, me, and Abe have all been on Pro Tour testing teams that have put up results. What do you think? What do you think of the differences between a support system and those teams are?
I think a testing team and a support system are not inherently different at its core, because I think honestly I kind of believe that the core of today's episode can be summed down to like, you should try to be a good person and help people out, and if you do that, people will probably help you out, and if you just kind of do the platonic ideal of like what we'd like in society, really, of like, when Abe needs help, we help Abe, and then when I need help, Abe helps Mason. Testing teams are much more typically trying to like solve or break something, but a team can be part of that. It really is just all about like the approach. Those are just kind of like, we are coming together kind of like a group project in school, right? Like, you remember those where it's like, we need to figure out what beats Nadu, right? Or like, we're just going to play Nadu. So that's kind of, I think, the difference. But, as a core element, everything we're kind of talking about today comes back to that idea of like, if you just do nice things and do good unto others, they'll probably pay you back, I didn't pick my Always Improving story today as like the one, but it occurs to me that like part of that story is I have friends and people I talk to and hang out, and they lent me Lorcana cards, and like they could have played those decks and like, or probably, they have to be better Lorcana players than me. I don't play. And it's like maybe they could have won with that deck, right? And so, but they were like, oh, I'll do this other thing, and you can do this. I don't mind, right? And they like helped me out and allowed me to play with, hundreds of dollars of cards, just because like they trust me and we have like had those interactions and those good experiences. And I think there are some people in some situations where it might be harder to break in. But I think one thing to remember is you have a cheat code with Magic, which is you all care about Magic. And I think if you approach things from the perspective of like, hey, I'm just trying to, have fun and learn and do all this sort of thing. I'm not trying to, like force my way into your friend group. I just want to interact some. I think most of the time, over a long enough time, you will find out that you have, between good friends and acquaintances and things like that, and you'll have a much deeper and better Magic experience because of it.
Dude, I love that, and I think it transitions into our next big point, and you're kind of highlighting the episode here of opportunities to support others is how you grow that, right? Like, it's one thing to be like, okay, let's get 3 people together, let's pull cards, let's test things together, to like, okay, well, like, what about these people outside of our like typical 3 to 5 people? Well, okay, well, do we like this person? Are they nice to us? Well, okay. Are they new to the game? Can we support new players? I have a story. Former member of Team CCMG back in the day when we were sponsored by Oasis. Former host of Need to Nerd, Wes Singleton. I did not know this story until he told it to me. There was a tournament at a comic book store on a Sunday, and we only had back in the day. You had to have 8 people for any tournament, and we only had 5. And I had a huge Magic collection at the time. I had 5 extra decks, and I just handed out decks to 4 more people. One of them was West, who I had never met before, and I was like, you can pick whatever deck you want, I'll play whatever deck is left over. And he played Wolfron Ramp, I believe it was, which was the best deck in the format at the time. It was his first Magic tournament. He went 2-1 or something at it, and it made me a forever friend. Like, he was like, I can't believe this person just literally handed me an X, like the best deck in the format, and did this thing. And I think that when you hear about like these grassroots movements to push up Paper Popper or Standard or whatever format it is, it always comes from somebody that's like, no, I love this thing, and I love people, and I want people to love this thing that I love. And it's not just about building a support system of like people that can help you, right? There's a lot of times where like you're going to loan cards or do something for somebody that maybe will never help you again in your existence in Magic. But it's about like, did you make this game better by doing what you did? And because of that, there's an opportunity in the future to learn. Like, for me, Wes taught me a lot of Magic in the future. He became a great Jeskai player in the future and taught me a lot of Magic. And that wouldn't have happened without that experience.
It's not transactional. I think transactional, is the thing I think listeners should probably take away. It's not like, oh, I'm doing this so that, Abe owes me one. Back to that example, right? I'm doing this because like it is something I want or I can do and feel comfortable doing, and just growing and engaging with people. So I really feel like at the end of the day, when like you help someone out, there's nothing wrong and there's nothing bad about doing that. And it isn't like, oh, I'm doing this so that they'll do it, or, oh, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's what I would want others to do for me, and I'm just going to lead by example. And I think that's at the end of the day fine,
Yeah, and I mean, I think even to transition like a bit, it's not about being, like what it says is true. It's not about being transactional. It's not about just like, quid pro quoing everything to like, oh, I'm going to do this because I'm going to get that back. But there's a lot of opportunities if you're engaged with your community or engaged with just Magic in general. A lot of opportunities to provide value into the ethos of the Magic community. I mean, you could be a player who plays entirely online and does not, have a local store or local community, and still do things that bring value to others and can cause you to get that that recognition and return, and be a part of someone else's support network too. I think that's like really important to acknowledge. Like, for example, I think Fire Shoes is like a perfect example. Like, I don't know what I'm honestly not aware of what Fire Shoes' claim to fame was before he just started retweeting everything people did that was
he was like one of the best CCMTG podcast listeners. What do you mean?
Well, there you go.
Yeah, his claim to fame was retweeting us. That was no, I'm just kidding.
Right, and so like, but now Fire Shoes is someone who like is everyone knows who Fire Shoes is, right? Like, and I'm sure, right, Fire Shoes does his like Battle Woods charity thing, whatever, right? Like, he's able to get a lot back out of what he does simply by saying, hey, that thing you did that you're sharing with me, I think is cool enough to repost, right? Like, this thing I'm going to put eyes on because that's awesome to me. And that really builds an energy point where like people, right? Like, I know there's so many tweets I see that are just at Fire Shoes at this point that's like almost a meme, right? And that's something that you could be a part of doing, something like that for someone. Or, you could write a labor of love 10-page Word doc about the deck you've been playing or about the format you've been playing, and put that out into the world and get eyes on it. And then, have that be something that, right, is part of your brand and your character's person, and helps you build that support network or be a part of other people's. Because really, and I think that's kind of what makes Magic a really awesome community, is that because of the size and scale and history of it, like those things do have opportunities to be recognized. They do have, avenues to be seen and to be acknowledged, and people do care enough at scale to make that, something worthwhile. I mean, sure, at this point, a lot of my personal friendships are ones that have come through Magic over the years, but even having a Discord that where we this is just an anecdote for my personal life. We have a Discord server that is just for like the DMV area Magic players, that started as just like our friend Discord coming from Facebook. We're like, all right, we're not gonna use Facebook anymore. Facebook Messenger sucks. We're over it. We have too many chats going on, too many things to talk about. Let's get something more organized, make a Discord. And now it's something where like, a lot of the just people who are part of our group support networks are in there, and we organize, right, like our team draft nights or our cube drafts or RCQs or lending cards. We even have someone moved to the area recently from the other side of the planet, literally from Australia, and was able to get a ride to an RCQ because they had access to it, because they were able to be a part of their local scene. And it could be, I've seen the same kind of thing happen in LGS discords in our area. I've seen it happen in just all sorts of social media, where just putting the ask out there and engaging and being a part of things, the network is out there looking for people to be a part of it, right? You're able to have a network if you're engaging. And I think that it's just, like Mason said, it's about putting out what it is you'd like to receive and then letting it happen. It's not about, the worst thing you could do is be someone who's like constantly keeping accounts of it and being like, oh, this person knows me that, and that person knows me this because I did this, or, holding it with a sense of importance. Like if you just put out value and give value for the sake of value, right, because you like to do it, that comes back to you, and that makes it so much easier and is really, really valuable just in the logistics of playing Magic, and also in just the effort of playing Magic at a high level.
I want to highlight this because this is something that I don't know how to learn. I don't know that it took me a long time, but I want to talk about kindness over cutthroat, because early in my Magic career, there were a lot of people that like took like the pen trick to heart, or like took these like very cutthroat things that Magic players could do to gain an advantage of, like, that's what it means to be a pro player. That's what it means to be like this thing. And then you learn about like what PV is. You learn about what Jerry is. You learn about like these good dudes that they didn't need to be cutthroat to like get there. They did it by building support systems, by building a foundation in which they could improve, and then sharing that foundation and expanding it with others. And we've talked a lot about, these moments where like you can learn from people that are worse from you. And like it's kind of important to do that in a game like Magic, because you don't know everything. The game's really hard. But one of the things that comes to mind is like the number of times where I got salty. And I don't do this in Magic anymore. Like I just don't salt off in Magic now. But I think that when I thought I was really good, when I was kind of medium, it was really easy to get salty. And I was very cutthroat oriented. And what I learned is that kindness and learning from others was actually the way to find others that would help me improve and that would lift me while I could also help them. And that was the key to unlocking things that I didn't get to know before because I was so cutthroat. And only people that wanted to be cutthroat like me would do. And this was like F&M to PTQ. Like it was so long ago. But I want to highlight it because I think that it's something that certain things recently on social media have highlighted. The last point that I want to make on ways to find others is that I'd like to use Mark Jacobson as an example. Mark is somebody that I beat to go to the Pro Tour, that beat me at the same Pro Tour I qualified for, that also happens to be like the controversial subject of like the worst tournament report in history, where somebody told them that, like, my people will remember you. You didn't concede to me, and like, it's a problem. And that's just not how building a support system works. It's not about like threatening people. It's not about this thing. It is, in a lot of ways, it's about like building the Magic community in the best way possible, especially the competitive community, where it can be like that. It can be really hard to break through. And when you don't know somebody, one thing that I'm really bad at, and I don't know, Mason and Abe, if you guys are bad at this, I'm really bad at names. I'll play against somebody like 3 times before I'll remember their name. And I'll sit down across from them and I'll be like, oh, I know who this is. But like, I didn't remember that when I looked at my pairings, and it's something that I'm actively working on. And it's like those type of things, as you realize, like, oh, I've played against this person in 3 tournaments. They probably really care about these type of tournaments, that I think enables you to understand the people that you need to engage with and care about.
Yeah, and I think that beyond just like engaging with your local community, or, you know, being part of that whole grassroots effort to make Magic as great as it can be, you know, at those levels, and doing that and being a part of that and benefiting from it, like, I think it's important to remember, you know, what the purpose of having a support system is, right? Like, having yourself aligned towards a goal is like really the purpose of, right, with your support system is something that exists to support you in your goals. And part of the thing about the Magic community is that, you know, there's a lot of different ways to engage with the game. Your goal could be to win an RCQ. Your goal could be to build a cool deck. Your goal could be to win an RCQ with your cool deck. It could be to go to the Pro Tour. It could be to, you know, be the world champion. It could be to play 5 games of EDH this weekend, right? Having that support system, support network inside your local community and also outside of it, I think, is really, really important, and really building, right, what are the important pieces of my support system? We said, you know, at the beginning of this, like content creators can be part of your support system. You know, people's Patreons can be part of your support system. Discord servers of content creators can be a part of your support system. It's really about knowing what you're trying to get out of those situations and where you're trying to go with that helps you build the right support system for you. I know I've told the anecdote before about how, like, my testing team of some of my closest friends was not the best testing team for me the time I qualified for my first Pro Tour. And I had to find people who were more aligned with what I was trying to do in order to do that, right? And I had access to, right, all the people who I was working with at the time were all people who were part of my support system. I just wasn't leaning on those parts of it, or all of the content that I wound up, you know, consuming or, you know, engaging with. You know, those are all things available to me because I did all this engagement, but I wasn't using it because it didn't line up for me. It didn't make sense for me to do compared to what I was doing. And I think it's not just about building that support system, but also understanding and leveraging those things you have that can support you. Like, if you're someone who is, you know, working a 9-to-5 job and has a family and also wants to compete and, you know, try to qualify for the RC, and, you know, that means that you're reading every Misplaced Ginger Patreon post and watching his stream for a few hours, or catching his VODs when he's playing, you know, Red Black or whatever deck in Pioneer it is that you're trying to play. You're finding a content creator who's playing that effectively. That's an important piece of your support system too, right? Understanding the resources you're drawing on outside of yourself, I think, is really the heart of the message here. As much as it's great to say, and I absolutely want to agree with and blast the point of, like, please positively engage with your local communities, put energy into them, and you will receive energy out of them. That is, like, the best thing you can do for Magic, is to just be a positive force in your local community. But also, you know, as far as how does this help me as a Magic player, is like knowing how to then leverage those things that you have and knowing what you have access to and building a plan and making sure you're using your attention and energy in a way that's going to lead you to your goal. That's the other piece of it, right? Like having the right people that you're choosing to include in your support system once you have access to them, or the right content or the right communities to make where you are putting your time and attention. I think our Discord is a great example of this. It's a community full of people who are aligned towards very similar goals in Magic. And sometimes different members of Discord are not interested in a format, or they're done playing a format because they've already won the RCQ that they were trying to win for the season, and they're just focusing on something else. And that's good to know, because they're telling you, I'm not going to be the resource you need right now for this. Or, maybe you can even ask. I know that, all of us have been part of conversations that I think have been really beneficial to patrons, where they've just asked a question about a format that maybe we're not personally invested in, but we have perspectives on that are valuable, right? And that access, right, gives them a piece of that system and that network, so that they don't have to do all the work themselves, and they can benefit from that. And really, I just think that overall, time, like, I want to make sure that we don't spend 30 minutes telling you how great it is to be a good person, but also that it's important to know why it is you're doing it and how to leverage the benefits that you receive from having that support system. And I think that, content and choosing the right content creators you can really trust is a part of that, right? Getting good information and good data, having good communities that you work with, or that you can trust to gain information is a part of that. And it's just important to remember, like, put it all into perspective and put it to work. What is the value of having the support system? And it's that you get to benefit from the value generated by all of the people around you that are in that support system for you.
I couldn't have said any of that better myself, Abe. I want to thank both of you. I think that it's important to just acknowledge that you two are part of my support system. Like, Abe, if I wanted to, like, to talk to you about Rimrock Night, or I won't say the word, I could do that. Like, I could talk to you about things that start with an A, and that with a deck that I think that we both love, right? Like, I legitimately, like, feel like, hey, like, for example, today, Abe, you'd be really proud of me. I cut a certain case from my sideboard. I thought it didn't. I thought it didn't serve a purpose. Yeah, I love the clap. And Mason, the number of times that, like, you and I have, whether we've chatted between the three of us or between you and me, like, I don't know. I appreciate that you two are there for me when I need it. Because, like, I don't know, like, there are only so many times where I can contribute as a father, right? Like, I can only do so much, and you two are always there when I'm like, hey, like, I'm dedicated right now. Here's what I'm thinking about. Obviously, like, the last Patreon episode shows that, where Mason and I almost swore, went off about Green Devotion, right? And I appreciate you two being a part of my support system, because I trust and appreciate both of you. From Jacob, we have, if you could add one existing card to any format, either through unbanning or new printing, what would it be and why? Abe, I'll let you go first.
I would boldly add, I can't even think of the name of the card. Oh, I would boldly add Azorius Chancery to Pioneer. I've said this for a long time. More bounce lands. Bounce lands and Pioneer is what I would do. I think blue-white just needs to be better hitting the land drops. I've said it, think twice, but then we got to Deuce, and I was right. We were that far away from the deck being tier 1. It's time to take it that next step up. Let me cut a land or two and still hit as many land drops, and now we're getting there. We have the spell density.
I don't hate the bounce lands in Pioneer, for what it's worth. That actually sounds kind of hot. Can I ban something at the same time I unban something, or do I just...
No, that's not the question. Sorry. Patron asked the question.
I'd unban Walking Ballista and Pioneer. I literally don't believe it would matter. I think that the only thing that it would do is would add green-black to the format in the form of counters, as it was originally. I don't. If it's a problem, you can ban something later, but that's what I would do. I just
like they did with Walking Ballista with the Heliod.
I mean, they could also just ban Heliod because that card doesn't see play.
Did you know a Johnny's Pride Mate is the most crafted card on Arena?
I actually did know that. How did I know that? Where did I read that?
They said it on a stream once.
Okay.
I think it's just telling that Life Gain Give Me Power is a popular casual archetype.
I literally
what
had
about
like
Life
a
Gain
30-minute
Ballista?
conversation about this exact thing today, and I don't want to last that long. But I will say that I do think that green-black counters is a real deck in Pioneer if Walking Ballista is in the format that like can actually compete as like an aggressively slanted mid-range deck with Thoughtseize, with the right cards. Like it actually is really good. But
Hardened Scales was one of the better decks in Pioneer for a long time.
Yeah. And
well, in the beginning.
Yeah.
Relatively long.
I would rather ban the card that doesn't see play. Karn's gone now. Like there's not a reason to not do it. I would unban Walking Ballista.
I would say the reason not to do it is still the same reason it was to not do it before.
No, you can just ban the other card, but
I played Heliod at the RC.
Great for you.
Did you know that?
I did know that.
It's an Amali. It was great.
Yeah.
It was sick.
Mason?
Yeah, I don't know. I can unban it. I mean, we've all done Pioneer so far, so I feel priced in the Pioneer.
I can give you a different one. I have a different one.
You have until I say I'm ready to talk about your next one. How about that?
I would print all of the energy cards in MH3 into Pioneer.
That's crazy.
I know it is. That's why I was in my
Wrath of the Skies might be pushing.
Do you think a Tune plus Wrath of the Skies, the very strong modern one?
Yeah, I think it would be pretty good. I think there's other things that we could do to the format. I would love the package. All right. Well, let me rephrase. I would.
How about this?
Every uncommon and below. Is that better?
I think those are some of the best ones.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. You just said Wrath of Skies. I'm trying to help you out.
No, that's fair. You heard my feedback and you adjusted yours, and I think it's a good iterative process.
Yeah,
that's good. I'm trying to think of like what is a cool card that would like make Pioneer objectively more fun, in my opinion, to be added. I haven't really thought about it. I mean, honestly, the thing that I would do is I would pander to the people and give them Snapcaster Mage. I think that would be cool. The card would be very strong. You know, whatever. That's a card that players really like, and that'd be kind of cool to see again. So,
can I change my answer?
Oh, Finhorn Elf. That way, Monogreen can play 12.
12 Elf for the Yorion deck?
Yeah, the Yorion green deck grows.
Is that just because of the mistake on the Wizards website?
No, that was the 3-Tree City. I need Yorion 3-Tree City elves.
Yorion 3-Tree City elves. If you want to join the conversation, you want to tell us what you would like in a given format, I'll make a post in the Discord. You can hand it over to the Patreon Discord. There's a public Discord for all of He's a Game Media. I do have a record date for our other show on He's a Game Media now. We will not be...
Searing Blaze.
Searing
Blaze. No fetch lands? It.
That's already in Pioneer. Oh,
that's Searing Blood.
That's Searing Blood. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mason. You can also join the public Discord or just leave a YouTube comment. Our last YouTube comment is waiting for Mason to respond. So, Mason, check it out. And then you can check us out on Twitter at CCMG. But like, subscribe, review, comment. That's the best way to support the show. Abe, where can people find you?
People can find me over at twitter.com/morenothings. And you can DM me over there for coaching if you are interested. Mason, how about you?
You can find me at twitch.tv/TheMasonClark. You can find me on Twitter at Mason E. Clark. You can reach out to me for coaching via Twitter or my email, masoneclark@gmail.com. You can check me out each and every other week on TCG Player. took a week off, so I think my next time's going to be in a week from now. But to make up for that, you can catch me on the Jerry T podcast this week. I'm guesting, and some other cool things are coming up in about 2 weeks. I'll talk about then. Spencer, what about you?
Find me at He's a Game on Twitter. You can find me every week moving forward on the Need to Nerd podcast. We had to redefine our recording schedule for some health stuff for me, as well as just like I have to watch House of the Dragon on time. Like, you know, we gotta record accordingly. And then this is not like super open, but I did get asked about it by 2 people this month. So I will say I do historically do LinkedIn coaching. If I'm not doing magic coaching right now, if you do want LinkedIn coaching for your career, I can help you with it. And I do have time to do that. So let me know and reach out to me basically just on Twitter at He's a Game, and I can help you out there. What'd you learn on the show this week, Mason?
I learned there's a YouTube comment waiting for me. I also want to give a shout out to most of my neighbors who have completed the McKay's road trip today. They started in North Carolina, and they're in some part of Tennessee right now. They hit every McKay's in 12 hours, which was the challenge. And I think they earned like $1,000 from McKay's store credit. So good for them. Abe, what you learned this week?
Wait, hold on. Time out. Rewind. What's a McKay's?
It's like a big used bookstore that turned into more than books. So it's
did they all get $1,000?
Each person in the car did, because they went to all of them.
Okay, are they like donating it to like a school? Like, what are they doing?
No, like they have $1,000 in McKay's credit, so they can go and get like books or an old Xbox game or a TV.
I see.
Or like it's like imagine a Walmart, but of like used goods.
So like a Goodwill?
No, well, kind of, I guess, but like when you go to McKay's, they have new things, and they also have things that you can go and trade in for either cash or credit. Where like a Goodwill, you donate. This, it's like a financial exchange.
Okay. I learned that Abe is very passionate about content being a part of your support system. And it probably helped Abe more than I realized before he joined the podcast.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know if when you're a full-time student in college and also playing the SCG tour like every other week, you do not get a lot of matches. And yeah, so that was definitely big for me.
Hey, what'd you learn this week?
I learned that Mason has a really good relationship with his neighbors.
During this segment, that's a new level of this segment. This is not appropriate for this segment.
This might be the last what we learned this week. As it's slowly devolving into meta garbage.
That's right.
Thank you everybody so much for listening. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you too, as I've already said on the show. See you all next week with another episode of CCMTG.